Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, every day we get these stacks of sources handed to us.
Biographies, academic papers, artistic manifestos, you name it.
And our mission, it's always the same, really. It's to find that hidden architecture, the blueprint that connects all these seemingly disparate pieces for you into a single worldview.
And today, we are undertaking a truly exceptional deep dive into the life and work of Manuel de Valle Colón.
His biography it's a study in synthesis, isn't it?
It absolutely is a seamless merging of the rigorous high-stakes world of civil rights law, institutional leadership, academic discipline, with this expansive, abstract, and philosophical realm of global poetry.
And the central paradox, I think, the point where these two worlds just have to intersect, is right there in the title of his poetry volume, The Geometry of Love.
Exactly. I mean, how does geometry, a science that's defined by fixed lines, precise angles, and quantifiable measurements, how does that become the operating system for the most chaotic, messy, and fundamentally immeasurable human experience?
Which is love.
Which is love. That's what we're really trying to dissect here.
So our sources, on one hand, they detail this life of just relentless high-impact action. We have the meticulous records of his Ivy League education, the specific landmark legal complaints he helped frame, his whole career as a high-ranking judge. That's the logical, measurable half.
And then we pivot to the other half, the abstract half, a comprehensive poetic philosophy that shows this deep, immersive knowledge of extremely varied cultural traditions, from Chinese and Thai poetry structures to the spiritual mythology of the Japanese and the indigenous heritage of the Taino people.
Right.
So we're really examining how this geometric metaphor serves not just to describe an emotion, but to define the necessary discipline, the structure, and I think the intellectual rigor you need to make meaning in a world that so often feels fragmented and just chaotic.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start where the straight line of his life began, because that foundation he laid in Harlem, it so clearly dictated the trajectory of everything that came after.
The foundational geometry, if we want to call it that. It begins in New York City. October 1948, Manuel del Valle y Colón was born the eldest son of Puerto Rican parents.
His father from Matillo and his mother from Mocha.
Exactly. And his earliest coordinates were set right in the public housing projects of Harlem.
He spent his first 9 years in East Harlem in the Carver houses, attending PS 72. And then the family moves across town to the Douglas Projects on West 102nd Street. So he's at PS 179 and then Junior High School 54.
In this environment, you have to understand, the public school system in Harlem during the 50s and early 60s, that was ground zero for the civil rights and education advocacy he would later spearhead.
That experience had to be profoundly formative.
Oh, completely. It instilled in him not just a desire for justice, but this realization that justice required structure. You couldn't just have the emotion, the passion. You needed a legal and institutional blueprint to actually enact real change.
And that appreciation for discipline, for precision, it becomes immediately evident when he enrolls at Brooklyn Technical High School.
From 1962 to 1966, yeah, in the college prep program. And it's not just the curriculum, it's the exhaustive list of his activities that really reveals this emerging geometric mind.
Absolutely. The sources list his involvement, and it's like a manual for civic engagement.
Right. He was a member of the Free World Club, the debating society, so he's learning the strict logic of argument and the survey. But listen to this.
Okay.
He was also on the polling squad, actively conducting polling for New York City elections.
Polling, which requires the ability to measure, to quantify, to draw conclusions from precise data.
It's early statistical geometry.
It really is.
And he was also the manager of the fencing team.
Fencing is pure applied geometry.
It is. Distance, timing, strategic lines, angles of attack and defense. He was instinctively learning that structure and discipline were the keys to victory, whether, on the strip or in the political arena.
But the real foundation for his later institutional activism, that really starts with the Aspira Club and El Nuevo Mundo.
This is critical. He quickly moved beyond just being a member. He gets elected the Issues and Actions chairman of the Aspira Club's federation.
And Aspira, founded by Dr. Antonia Pantoja, its whole purpose was to cultivate future leadership among Puerto Rican youth.
It was a factory for institution builders.
And the level of his peers and mentors at this stage is it's astounding. It tells you immediately that he was operating at a really high political and strategic level while he was still just a teenager.
Oh, yeah. His peers included Wilfredo Caraballo, who would become a prominent law professor and public advocate.
And Fernando Ferrer, the future Bronx borough president.
Exactly. He was moving in circles that demanded strategic, structured thinking from the very beginning.
And his mentors, the people providing the blueprints, were giants. Antonia Pantoja herself, Yolanda Sanchez, Isora Santiago. I mean, what did that mentorship even look like? It wasn't just pep talks, was it?
No, not at all. This was rigorous training in, organizational science and political methodology.
Well, yeah.
Pantoja taught them how to identify a community problem.
Okay.
How to convert that, nebulous concern into a measurable, actionable institutional goal.
Yeah.
And then how to build the coalition you need to achieve it.
So she was, in effect, teaching the geometry of effective activism.
That's a perfect way to put it. He learned how to draw the straight line from community pain to political relief.
So after graduating from Brooklyn Tech in '66, he enters the academic world, but immediately he starts charting his own intellectual coordinates. He does a post-grad year at the Yale Transitional Year program, then starts at Wesleyan in '67.
And this period is less about just taking classes and more about active research on the shape of identity.
It's a remarkable model of self-directed learning.
It really is. He didn't just sit in the lecture hall. He took a semester in the fall of '68, working hands-on in New York City for the Edwin Gould Foundation and the Cooperative Program for Educational Opportunity.
And his job was to recruit minority students.
Right. And he received academic credit through Wesleyan's American Studies program for literally applying theory studying identity by acting as an agent of change in the field.
He was testing the system's geometry in real time.
In real time. He also secured a Hof grant during that period to conduct original research into issues related to identity.
Yeah.
So he's really defining his own cultural coordinates.
And then he broadens the map even further. Spring of '69, he's in Madrid studying Spanish literature. And that summer, he uses a foundation grant to study Puerto Rican history, literature, and political science at the University of Puerto Rico in Rio Piedras.
But here's the detail that links right back to his innate need for structure.
What's that?
During that summer in Puerto Rico, he didn't just read the material. He compiled a syllabus for a course on the history and politics of Puerto Rico.
Wow.
He didn't wait for an institution to teach the subject he cared about. He created the curriculum, the intellectual framework himself.
So he was building the house of his own identity, brick by intellectual brick, before he even really got started. That deep commitment to creating structure out of fragmented knowledge. That is truly the geometry of self-formation.
And that rigorously defined structure was about to be deployed at Princeton.
So when he transfers to Princeton in 1969, he's majoring in history, Latin American studies, and Afro-American studies. But he doesn't just enroll. He uses the campus as this new, larger space to apply his geometric principles of institution building.
The activist did not disappear behind the Ivy Wall.
Not at all.
He immediately founded the Latino organization on campus, actively recruiting Latinos and Latinas, which was vital institutional work at the time.
Right.
And more importantly, he secured university approval for one of the first Ivy League seminars on the history and politics of Puerto Rico.
He brought the syllabus he had literally constructed in Rio Piedras and embedded that knowledge structure directly into the core curriculum of an elite American university.
He was making his cultural coordinates central to the larger American academic map.
And this is where the academic discipline, the geometric rigor of his undergraduate work, becomes a direct, measurable force in national civil rights law, his senior thesis.
Yes. It was titled A History of the Puerto Rican Student and Public Education, 1945-1969.
Let's slow down on this because this is the intellectual line of force that runs straight from a college dorm room to the federal judiciary.
It's a stunning sequence of events. A chapter of that very thesis was used to craft a memorandum while he was an intern for Senator Jacob Javits.
Okay.
That memorandum, which is based on his historical and structural analysis of educational inequality, was then incorporated into a 1972 U.S. Commission on Civil Rights hearing.
And the legal legacy from that.
The Puerto Rican Legal Defense and Education Fund,
Yep.
Inc., used the findings from that exact academic work, that structural analysis, to frame the core legal complaint in the landmark case, Aspera v. Board of Education of the City of New York.
Wow. So his 4 years of structural research, which culminated in his senior thesis, wasn't just graded and then put on a shelf.
Right.
It literally became the legal foundation, the geometric argument, for the most significant civil rights case concerning bilingual education in New York City history.
That is the definition of intellectual leverage.
Absolutely.
It is the moment when his academic rigor, achieved maximum societal impact.
Hmm?
He graduated from Princeton in '71, and then, armed with this structural knowledge, he headed straight to Yale Law School.
On a John Hay Whitney Fellowship, no less.
Right.
So Yale Law, 1971 to 1974, a class full of future heavyweights, including Clarence Thomas and Lani Guanyu.
Incredible class.
But here's the critical point. He was a full-time law student, and yet he didn't stop teaching.
This is where we see that intense discipline, the ability to run parallel tracks without anything derailing. While he was studying complex legal codes, he was also teaching undergraduate courses at Yale College.
On the history and politics of Puerto Rico and the Puerto Rican experience in the United States.
And he also founded the undergraduate Puerto Rican organization, Despierta Boricua.
Wait, so a full-time law student at Yale teaching undergrads and founding organizations. That level of geometric discipline is almost inhuman.
It suggests a profound commitment not just to learning the structure, but to immediately replicating that structure for the benefit of others.
And the impact of that teaching, it's long-lasting. His students included influential figures like Honorable Eduardo Padro, Gilbert Casillas.
Who became the first Puerto Rican chairman of the U.S. EEOC.
Right, and others who went on to lead major academic and political institutions. He wasn't just teaching history, he was training an entire generation in the geometry of leadership.
And that leads us directly to that high-impact anecdote that truly ties the geometry of his early life to the architecture of the legal world. The Supreme Court connection with Sonia Sotomayor.
It's a beautiful full-circle moment.
It really is. We know that earlier in his career, while he was teaching at Princeton, he was introduced to a young student named Sonia Sotomayor through a colleague.
And Del Valle y Colón, with his early career defined by recruitment and being a role model, clearly made an impression.
A huge one. Decades later, his Yale classmate, Justice Clarence Thomas, invites him to attend the investiture of Justice Sotomayor at the Supreme Court.
And the inscription she writes in his copy of her memoir, My Beloved World, it's the ultimate statement of validation if we're using his poetic terms.
It really is. She writes, Manuel, you are my first role model, someone with a passion for fighting for change. Thank you for all you have done for so many and for what you continue to do. Sonia Sotomayor.
That quote isn't just praise, it is a confirmation that the foundational structure he built in recruiting, in teaching, in advocacy created a stable platform for a Supreme Court justice.
It's a perfect geometric proof of concept.
Yeah.
So immediately after graduating from Yale Law, he channeled that academic rigor into immediate action at the Puerto Rican Legal Defense and Education Fund.
From 1974 to 75, he's translating the straight line of his senior thesis into active legal victories.
And the two cases we have to emphasize here are the legal implementation of the very structure he helped design.
First, Aspera v. Board of Education, which mandated the consent decree for bilingual education. It fundamentally altered the educational landscape for limited English-speaking children in New York.
And second, Pabon v. Levine, which ensured that Spanish-speaking claimants seeking New York State unemployment insurance benefits received bilingual notice.
So if you look at these cases, they're about equity of access based on language.
Exactly. They are about ensuring that the legal system structure is inclusive, not discriminatory. They use the precision of the law to define equitable boundaries.
And from there, his professional world just expanded, but the methodology, the applied structure, it remained the same.
Admitted to practice before the U.S. Supreme Court, multiple circuit courts of appeals, he spent over a decade as a trial attorney for the U.S. Department of Labor, prosecuting federal labor law violations.
And throughout this entire legal career, that parallel line of academia never wavered.
Never. Adjunct associate professor at Fordham, visiting lecturer at Princeton and Yale, associate professor of law at New York Law School. He was constantly teaching the structural methodology he was implementing in court.
It's fascinating. His entire legal life seems defined by finding imbalances in the system and then applying a rigorous geometric legal counterforce to restore equilibrium.
And that commitment to structural analysis continued right through the 1980s, marked by two highly prestigious research fellowships that gave him the intellectual arsenal to operate the highest levels of administrative law.
First, the Rockefeller Foundation Fellowship from '83 to '84. He was one of only 17 Americans selected to study at the London School of Economics and Political Science.
I mean, that is an incredibly selective geometric space to be in.
Yeah.
And he used that time to define the jurisprudence of Puerto Rico before the U.S. Supreme Court, resulting in a thesis that gets published. Again, the research immediately enters the public domain, becomes a foundational text,
And at the same time, he's honing his skills in conflict resolution.
right? Becoming one of the few Puerto Rican arbitrators in the U.S. after graduating from that rigorous minority arbitrator program.
Arbitration is the ultimate geometric exercise, isn't it? Finding the point of equilibrium between two conflicting lines of argument.
It demands total impartiality and a precise measurement of conflicting claims. Then the second major piece of research was the Ford Foundation Fellowship.
Yeah, 1986 to 87.
And this was a deep dive into national origin discrimination, focusing specifically on how language acts as a line of exclusion,
And this research was monumental, a 400-page monograph.
which was then condensed and published in the Harvard Journal of Hispanic Policy as Toward a Language-Based National Origin Modality. He was mapping the legal vulnerability of Hispanic populations based on language, providing this precise structural analysis of where and how discrimination manifested.
It shows such a dedication to grounding legal practice in comprehensive, almost scientific-level research.
And then he moves into high-level public service, culminating in a role where he was required to apply that pure, cold logic to the messiest of human conflicts.
From 1991 to 1995, he was the chief administrative law judge for the New York State Division of Human Rights.
And the first Puerto Rican to hold that position. This role required him to apply geometric rigor to the messy reality of human conflict, dealing with cases of racial harassment, sexual harassment, AIDS discrimination.
So he's taking these explosive, highly emotional conflicts and imposing an impartial, defined structure onto them for resolution.
Yes. He used the geometric power of his position to prioritize the adjudication of these crucial cases, making sure the legal mechanism provided justice efficiently and structurally.
And later, he continued this work as the chief administrative law judge for the Social Security Administration in San Juan, Puerto Rico until 2020.
His entire professional life is a testament to the fact that discipline and knowledge are the precursors to justice.
And this brings us to the parallel vocation, the one that runs alongside the straight line of his legal career, poetry. That meticulousness he applied to law now manifests in the equally rigorous but abstract architecture of his poetic work.
The sheer volume is incredible. Over 50 volumes in his Omnibus poetry series. He's the poet as the seeker of justice and beauty alike. But what defines his approach isn't just volume, it's the cultural depth, the linguistic and emotional immersion he demonstrates.
Right, he's incorporating the structures of multiple global traditions, Thai, Chinese, Japanese, and Taino. Let's pause on Taino for a second. For listeners who might not be familiar, what does referencing Taino traditions bring to his poetic geometry?
Well, Taino refers to the indigenous heritage of the Caribbean, the native people of Puerto Rico, Cuba, Hispaniola. By integrating Taino mythology and language, he's anchoring his work in the deepest, original cultural foundation of his homeland.
So he's connecting modern fragmentation with ancestral wholeness?
Exactly. It's foundational geometry finding the oldest, most resilient structures.
And the driving question of all this deep, culturally translated work.
The question that underlies all his poetry, and that he seeks to answer through structure and metaphor, is a simple one. What does it mean to be human here?
Which brings us to the ultimate synthesis, the geometry of love. And the book is dedicated to those who find measurements inadequate to the emotion of love.
Which seems like a direct challenge to the very premise of the title.
It does.
It is, and that's the beautiful tension. He acknowledges the sentiment, but insists that measurement is not only possible, but necessary to sustain love. His core themes view love as a structure, not a fleeting feeling.
So it has shape, limits, angles, tensions, balances.
Just like a legal argument or a building.
He talks about the necessity of meaning-making, constructing love from fragmented sources, moments, gestures, memories.
Which mirrors his legal training, where you take disparate pieces of evidence, disparate lines of testimony, and force them into a coherent, meaningful narrative. In poetry, he applies the same method to emotion.
And love also demands knowledge, discipline, and self-formation.
And the connection to the physical world, the geometry of embodiment, is key. Love is experienced spatially, through touch, posture, and balance. It requires a specific, respectful proportion, engaging in intimacy without intrusion.
And finally, he looks at geometry in motion. Movement, travel, liminal spaces, terminals, paths, journeys. He sees the natural world itself as a perfect geometric order. He is using the precision of Euclid to chart the internal, messy landscape of human commitment. Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. We're moving from the conceptual outline of the collection to the actual structural analysis of love itself. Let's start with that foundational metaphor, the essential triangle.
Right. The geometry of love, for him, is definitively triangular. The two obvious sides are, of course, the lovers themselves. But the third, elusive and most crucial side is validation.
What exactly is this validation? Is it just saying, I love you more often?
No, it's far more complex. Validation, in this geometric sense, it's the universe's confirmation of their commitment.
So not just human affirmation.
Not just human, no. It's an energetic confirmation that their bond is meaningful enough to resist the entropy of the world. It begins subtly. The specific twinkle of the eyes, the open smile, that shared, almost silent understanding, which confirms the essential importance of mutual presence.
So it's not simply an emotional state, but a measurable metaphysical alignment. And the sources say the effect of this alignment is powerful. It turns physics on its head.
That's right. When validation is present, moments explode with meaning, they stop time. The lovers become dreamers, and these dreamers, validated by time, experience, sacrifice, dedication, they become the engine of a creation of their own making.
They create a reality that defies standard physics.
Exactly. The triangle is the most stable shape, and once it's completed by validation, it achieves maximum resilience.
But doesn't this hyperanalysis risk taking the joy and mystery out of love? If love is anxious, messy, full of tears, and these over-the-top vows, why would you want to, as he says, drown yourself in geometry?
Because geometry provides a navigational system for that chaos. When emotional angst hits, the structure is your anchor. To be the best version of a lover, you must drown yourself with the knowledge of geometry, because geometry allows you to map the terrain of your feelings,
You use it to draw lines that connect the parallel universes where lovers reside.
forming shapes that embolden and embrace. You're making meaning out of pieces of information, reading lines, arcs, and angle structures, forms, and logic, from a smile, a hug, or a touch. You're imposing order on happenstance.
Yeah.
And here's the critical paradox. You must ultimately be ready to subordinate that logic to the winds of a lover's sigh. The goal is analysis leading to deeper feeling, not analysis instead of feeling.
So that suggests that true mastery in love, just like in law or art, requires understanding the rules only so you know how and when to break them.
Absolutely. The tension between structure and freedom is constant. He speaks of appreciating the glory of a straight line, knowing that 3 points determine a plane. This is the ideal of commitment. And yet, lovers constantly violate the laws of physics and order.
They engage in chaos.
They become an irresistible force, or they yield to circumstance, which allows the relationship to evolve into a higher form of communication.
And for describing this trajectory of uncertainty, he uses the perfect geometric metaphor, the parabola.
The parabola is the path of a projectile under gravity. It rises to a peak, and then it must fall. Lovers guess how much and to what extent they love, wondering if their path will last or find a pause, like a parabola on a graph.
It perfectly captures the inherent uncertainty of commitment.
It does.
But if I map our relationship using a parabola, it seems kind of cold. It suggests a predetermined, mathematically certain endpoint. How does he use geometry to describe hope, not just inevitability?
The hope lies in the measurement itself. By recognizing the parabolic nature of the relationship, the constant fight against gravity, the knowledge that there must be a peak and a turning point, you can actively work to sustain the commitment.
So you make the path less about a fall and more about a graceful evolution.
You use the measurement to resist the natural laws of decay. You fight entropy with intentional structure. The graph isn't meant to predict failure, but to chart the effort required for success.
And that intentional structure extends directly to the physical body, connecting spiritual well-being to anatomical geometry. Let's look at the hand.
The geometry of the hand is extraordinarily complex. The palm is described as an oblong block, the fingers are tapering cylinders, and the thumb is a crucial oval and triangular wedge,
And the complexity of joints and angles allows for the powerful sensation of touch.
which, for him, provides wholeness to a fragmented world and connects us to the universe.
And he draws a sharp contrast between this natural, holistic geometry and modern life.
Okay. He argues that in our data-dominated civilization, the hand is degraded. It's no longer a tool for connection and creation. It's just a series of keys to pound away on keyboards in a state of electronic servitude.
We forget the hand's innate geometry, its purpose.
We prioritize cold input over human output.
And that concept of wholeness and grounding is even more powerful when he discusses the geometry of the foot.
The foot is the basis of our structural connection to the earth. Its complex geometry relies on 3 arches. the medial longitudinal, the lateral longitudinal, and the transverse arch.
This is the geometry of grounding.
It is. Grounding yourself in the element that nurtures life. Walking barefoot is highlighted as the act that stabilizes and centers the soul, strengthening posture and balance. It promotes life and spiritual connection to nature.
And the contrast. The imbalance created by modern life and work.
The very act of wearing dress shoes for the office, where the god of productivity prevails, suppresses harmony with nature. That lack of grounding jeopardizes our mobility, our flexibility.
And eventually, the soul itself.
The body's architecture is being violated by the architecture of commerce. We are sacrificing our essential geometric balance for the sake of calculation and material success.
And the geometry of the heart offers a third, equally compelling model of resilience. He compares it to a tree.
The heart isn't just a pump, it has a circular trunk. That trunk is reaching both up and down, connecting roots to sky. The subterranean roots represent earth nurture, while the outstretched limbs and branches represent sun nurture.
It's the constant dynamic of holding in while reaching out, connecting the in and out flow of life.
It beats the pace of the universe. The structure of the tree, its ability to stand vertical against gravity, to withstand turbulence, is the geometry of endurance and spiritual resilience required to sustain emotional life. He's saying that to understand the heart, you must understand the architecture of the tree.
Finally, we turn to how he uses geometric imagery to find pattern and meaning in art and in everyday discarded life. Let's talk about fragmentation, using the image of kirigami paper.
Kirigami is the Japanese art of cutting paper, often involving geometric shapes. He describes seeing these multicolored square fragments of kirigami, paper yellow, red, green arrayed in a temple.
And these fragments, although they're small and distinct, they mirror the poet's own streaming non-sequential ideas.
The poet is searching for meaning in happenstance, looking for the geometric dots that connect the zenith of love's door and the depth of love's window.
So the poet is seeking pattern in the trivial, the causal, the everyday.
Especially for a generation that feels alienated from traditional centers of meaning. The small, sharp geometric shapes provide a way to construct a cohesive worldview from chaos.
He also uses abstract geometric art to illustrate how order compels introspection, like painting a perfect red square next to a perfect light blue square.
The power lies in the simplicity of the structure. Horizontal, vertical, and parallel lines provide pattern to chaos. He notes the parallelism inherent in lovers imitating each other, matching clothes, singing the same songs.
This simple visual geometry gives the world a sudden, compelling pattern.
And that very pattern can make the whole world stop, forcing the museum visitor to pause and actively make sense of the life represented by the light blue and red squares.
The anecdote about painting the nihilist is maybe the most acute illustration of how geometry can diagnose a spiritual ailment.
It is stunning. The artist was told not to paint a portrait, but the feelings emanating from the nihilist's presence. The artist chose to represent the subject as a series of curves.
Circumference, radius, arc, segment. Why curves?
The artist captured the nihilist's emptiness through those curves, a sleek silhouette that, while full of form, lacked the rigid lines of commitment.
So when the nihilist saw the painting,
He was shocked. The geometry of the curves revealed what he had lost, the innocence of commitment and the corruption that comes with status. The artistic geometry exposed a spiritual void defined by a lack of straight-line conviction.
and the geometry of decay provides a final, powerful contrast.
Even trash decaying cartons, food, flowers, retains geometric designs that impel its presence. He contrasts this messy, chaotic decay with the self-filtering, dynamic geometry of a river, stream, and waterfall, which constantly vanquishes what does not belong.
It's the natural world showing us how to manage entropy.
And he connects this struggle back to his own life, recalling how school exams were so carefully designed with sentences and paragraphs that mirrored the structure of a square or a rectangle.
Life required correct responses to appropriate forms.
And this geometric structure of testing contrasted so sharply with a world that values illusion over reality, a world that displaces the sides of love, which are the only things that truly matter. He realized that logic is required for life, but only love provides the coordinates for meaning.
This deep dive has charted a truly remarkable life one that achieved staggering success and influence precisely because of an unwavering commitment to structural discipline, from applying the geometry of activism in the Carver houses to using the straight lines of legal precedent to frame landmark civil rights cases at Yale. Manuel Valle Colón used rigor as his fundamental tool for justice.
And we've seen that the meticulous logic required for his legal triumphs is the same intellectual muscle he uses to define human emotion. He found that knowledge and discipline are not the opposite of feeling. They are the necessary architecture for feeling deeper, for measuring commitment when sentiment inevitably fails.
The geometry of love isn't just a title, it's a discipline. It requires recognizing the essential stability of the triangle of validation, accepting the parabolic uncertainty of trajectory, and finding spiritual grounding through the innate geometry of the body.
It's the constant work of fighting gravity and obstacles as you walk down a common path, learning to fall, pick yourself up, and walk in unison or apart, validating your dreams against the often brutal geometry of reality.
And as we close, the source material leaves us with that poignant, reflective image. The character who finds comfort resting on a pile of warm clothes just taken out of the dryer.
This was the only solace provided by parents who taught him that business requires cold-hearted logic and calculated actions. This character lacks alignment with the emotions that truly give sense to humanity, living solely within a geometry of calculation.
We have spent this time mapping how geometry can describe both cold, calculated business logic and passionate spiritual creation, the sharp angles of law and the graceful arc of a lover's smile.
But what happens when the geometry of compassion is lost? I mean, what happens when we've successfully mapped the lines and angles of the material world, but the geometry of calculation becomes the only way we know how to find comfort?
Something to think about as you navigate the lines, angles, and curves of your own world and decide which geometry will define your commitments. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.